stand for it. Right. America, Canada, Mexico, Japan, Peru, Chile, Singapore, Vietnam, Brunei, Australia and New Zealand. These are the 12 countries currently negotiating the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement in secret. Thank you all for coming for the Kiwis Fight Back TPPA rally today. While individually we are but one, collectively we can achieve the power to create change through a peaceful group resistance. Indeed, this was how we achieved our nuclear-free status in 1987. Alright. The empowered protests from then and unwavering stance of New Zealand people galvanised our country on an issue that also elevated us to the world stage and earned us global respect and admiration. It's that time again, people. Let's show this government and the US that we will not be silenced, nor will we be owned by corporate America. Silence begets surrender, and we must not be silent. Every single one of you here today adds to the power of our nation's resistance to the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. The push to get the TPPA through is coming from America, who will effectively be the overriding control and lawmakers of the agreement. We only know this agreement exists because of the documents that were leaked by someone who felt strongly enough that we should know what was being negotiated on our behalf without our knowledge, input or consent. Governments have made previous attempts to enact similar agreements but have met with widespread resistance from the people and have had to abandon these proposed agreements. This time, to ensure that the public cannot dispute the agreement, it is being done in private. They know we won't like it and they didn't want us to have a chance to stop it. But we do know. Our goal today is to inform as many people as possible of the detrimental effects this agreement will have on our small nation, to show our united resistance to this government and ultimately to cause our government to abandon this agreement also. To quote Tim Grosser, our Minister of Trade, those people who are opposed to the agreement want access to the text so they can blow it apart. Now, if the government was acting in the best interests of the public, then the public would not choose to stand against it. However, from the text that has been leaked, we see that once again this agreement is binding indefinitely. No future government can get us out of it, and while disguised as a trade deal, it alarmingly gives large corporations rights to sue our government through an international tribunal if the corporation perceives our laws are causing a loss to their profits. These laws and regulations, most of which are in place to protect our rights and our environment, can be deemed illegal barriers to trade and overturned by the tribunal and accompanied with massive fines, some in the millions or billions. For example, through a similar agreement at the moment, Australia is currently being sued by big tobacco corporation Philip Morris Tobacco over Australia's plain packaging law on cigarettes, as Philip Morris Tobacco is claiming a decrease in profits. Now, interestingly, the agreement being used to sue Australia is an old Australia and Hong Kong agreement from 1993, but Philip Morris Tobacco is an American-based country. Currently, the US does not have such an agreement with Australia, so Philip Morris Tobacco have set themselves up in Hong Kong to use an elusive part of an old trade agreement to sue Australia. This is just one of the kind of dirty tactics that many large US corporations use to achieve their goals. With the TPPA signed, these corporations can shred our laws and
hold the microphone up closer to your mouth.
I can hear it trying to echo. With the TPPA signed, these corporations can shred our laws that are in place to protect us and bring us more in line with the corrupt systems that are already entrenched within America. The same systems that are causing the rich to get richer, the poor to get poorer, while the environment is being trashed. America's example of leadership includes bailing out the banks and funding major wars, while Detroit is left to go bankrupt. Water is not considered a human right in America, and the water to many destitute Detroit residents has been turned off even after they've paid their bills. Meanwhile, businesses and industrial complexes owing sometimes millions in rates and taxes enjoyed continued water supply protection under US law. Obama has introduced laws that make it illegal for American states or counties to introduce bans or regulations, including labelling laws, for genetically modified Roundup-ready foods, as these regulations will impinge on the profits of Monsanto, who is a major financial backer of Obama's contingency and the FDA, as are Big Pharma, Big Tobacco, and many of the other large corporations that Obama is acting on behalf of.
Shame.
Can everyone say conflict of interest?
Conflict of interest!
All right, I just want to get a quick idea. Who of you guys has heard of Monsanto? Raise your hands if you have.
Monsanto!
Yeah.
Monsanto! That's the one. Excellent. I'm going to get up a bit. I've got another bit here to read out to you, and then we're going to get Tilly up. She's going to sing us a song. And I'm going to come back. We're going to open it up for people to come and speak, and I'm going to come back a bit later with some stuff on Monsanto that some people won't have heard. And probably even those who know of it won't have heard most of the information. Do you guys want to hear this now, or should we have our music? Hear it? What? Hear it? Okay. All right. This was put out by It's Our Future Kiwis Fight Back. It was put out on their Facebook page. All right. The latest version of intellectual property. And this was from the 8th of November. So the latest version of Intellectual Property chapter leaked a couple of weeks ago as a timely reminder of what's at stake. This confirmed that the US has backed off on some demands, such as the ban on parallel importing, because its own courts had ruled in favour of parallel imports. It has toned down some other demands, such as criminalising those who break the regional digital locks on DVDs in the face of a concerted campaign for internet freedom. But the leak showed two other major risks for New Zealand from this part of the document alone are still on the table. Big Pharma wants to lock up access to information on new generation biologics medicines to treat cancer, diabetes and other crippling illnesses in New Zealand for a further 3 or even 7 years. This means they reap their mega profits for longer. Pharmac would have to reallocate funds from its capped budget to pay for them, or face a political and public backlash for not subsidising the super expensive new life-saving medicines. Copyright protection is also likely to rise from the life of the author plus 50 years to life plus 70 years. Forget claims about fair returns for the creator, they are long dead. This is known as the Mickey Mouse Club clause. So the likes of Disney, whose legal rights are about to run out, can keep reeling in the royalties. Did I hear you sigh? Heard all this before? I couldn't agree more. But remember, the US has had to back down on various demands because of the enormous pressure on our and other negotiations. There is also a much bigger long-term reason to fight the TPPA. It is just one of 3 mega deals currently being negotiated. Their common aim is to lock the world into a failed neoliberal regime to benefit corporate greed. These so-called 21st century deals protect their future, not ours. A terrible twin of the TPPA is a deal being negotiated between the US and the UE, known as the TTIP, Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. Imagine what kind of rules the US and UE will agree on. Already the TTIP has sparked protests throughout Europe, especially on the right of foreign investors to sue the governments. That involves 2 disputes against Germany over climate change mitigation measures and closure of nuclear plants has made the risks very real. Very real. The third leg of the trifecta is the Trade and Services Agreement, the TISA. Think of this as the secret love child of the GATS, the services agreement at the World Trade Organization that Kiwis, among many others, protested against in the early 2000s. Negotiations in the World Trade Organization to get tighter rules that would benefit in the world services transnationals from banks and entertainment to accounting firms and water companies have been paralysed for years. So 23 parties, including New Zealand, are stitching up their own deal through the back door. The stated goal is to bring trade and services agreement back into the World Trade Organization and force it onto countries like India, Brazil and South Africa that have held out in the GATS 2000s negotiations. Australia has been hosting the TISA talks under a commitment to secrecy that's even more excessive than the TPPA. You might remember the financial services text was leaked several months ago. As with the TPPA, there are bound to be more. When writing this, the It's Our Future writer was on his way back from 2 meetings in Geneva that reinforced the need to stop this package through opposition on a global scale. The annual World Investment Forum 2014 at UNCTAD had the telling title Reform of the 2A Regime. The session on investor-state dispute settlement was standing room only. Governments like Argentina, South Africa, Namibia, Slovakia and India, who were victims of investor-state settlements disputes, spoke passionately about the abuse of these treaties and attacks on their sovereign right to regulate in the national interest. They debunked claims that these agreements attracted foreign investment that benefit them. Several confirmed that they are terminating some existing agreements, seeking to renegotiate others, and developing national interest laws via viable alternatives. The corporate lobbies from the US and Europe and their patron states insisted that there were 2 minor problems with the investment regime that could be resolved by tweaking along the lines of what is being proposed with the TPPA and the TIP. This debate is fast gaining momentum, but there will be several more years before the grounds shift far enough to achieve the critical mass that is needed to force a total overhaul of the investment regime. The last thing countries should be doing is locking themselves into more of these investment deals through treaties like the TPPA, especially New Zealand, which currently has limited exposure to these risks. The second event was a forum organised by Public Services International, among others, to educate national activists and Geneva-based government delegations about the dangers of TISA. Our presentations drew belligerent reactions from the countries belonging to the very good friends of services, as those promoting TISA call themselves. It made the tone of the TPPA negotiations seem almost convivial and showed how ideologically determined they are to tighten the noose on neoliberalism. What they can't get in one agreement, they will trifle in another. The TPPA is the longest running of these deals. Negotiations began 4.5 years ago. They seem to be at a perpetual tipping point. What happens in the next month will be crucial. Obama announced some months ago that he wanted some kind of deal to announce to the public when the APEC and the TPPA leaders meet around 10th November in China, who interestingly enough is not part of this agreement. US officials repeated last week that they want to announce, that seems implausible. With the US and Japan still deadlocked over agriculture, a series of meetings have just begun in Australia in an attempt to pull off the seemingly impossible. Yet another failed deadline will pose huge credibility problems for politicians who have to justify pouring more taxpayers' money down the TPPA hole. It will also be soul-destroying for many of the negotiators who are heartily sick of the process. But the prospect of another year or more of negotiations is also a problem for critics of the TPPA. The greatest risk is populist fatigue and media disinterest. This is why we need you to send an uncompromising message to John Key and Tim Grosser. Sign the new petition. It's down here, over here. We've got some petitions here. Sign them. There's one for Tauranga welcome the Western Bay of Plenty and other areas. Sign as many as you want, they're going to different councils. Just get your name on there. Alright, Tilly. We've got Tilly here somewhere.